Well, hello and welcome. My name is Hector Del Castillo, Chief Product Officer at Bold PM, and today's topic is the path to valuable products. And before we get started, I want to go over some housekeeping items. First of all participants are listen-only mode, and make sure that if you can hear us or if you cannot hear us, be sure to refresh your browser. Google Chrome browser works best with Zoom, so hopefully all of you can hear us, and if not, try refreshing your browser or logging in and logging out and back in to actually be able to listen. Also, you can submit questions. There'll be a Q&A at the end of today's discussion. You can submit your questions using the Q&A window, and Lindsay will moderate the questions at the end of today's discussion. So be sure to just type in questions as we proceed. I am going to be covering a lot of material, so I'm going to go quite fast. That's okay, because I want to be able to allow for a few minutes at the end for questions. And we're also recording today's session, so the entire discussion today will be recorded. And if you're interested in watching the replay, I will let you know how you can actually get access to the replay after the tonight's live session. So first, I want to give a shout out to all the organizers and sponsors at ProductTank Northern Virginia for hosting this event and also for allowing me to be here today. So I want to thank everyone who's been working hard at making sure that at least you have suitable topics and also speakers, and as well as sponsors. And this, I believe, is the second virtual meetup since we've gone to the safe social distancing. So this is probably the way of the future. I've been doing quite a few meetups now, virtual, since March. Also, a shout out to Podcast Village, because they're actually my partner. Everything that I record from all my talks, they actually produce great podcasts and videos, and they're actually provide great services, make things very listenable, but also viewable as well. And so shout out to Podcast Village. If you're on Twitter, you can use this particular hashtags, hashtag digital, hashtag product strategy, hashtag product management, and use these handles at ProductTank, that is the general ProductTank. And Lindsay, I wasn't really sure if you have a specific one for NoVa. I didn't see one, but I wasn't really sure if you have a handle for the NoVa group.
I always forget if it's NoVa ProductTank or ProductTank NoVa. I have to go look. I think it's
type it in.
NoVa.
Type it in the chat if you can, and just let people know that'll be the one to use. Also, you can use my own handle at HM Del Castillo, and those are the two handles to use. And hopefully, Lindsay will provide you the one for this group as well. As I mentioned earlier, we are recording to this entire discussion, and if you're interested in watching the replay, you can actually go in, if you haven't already done so, submit the web form in this particular landing page, and you'll be getting an automatic response as to how you not only join tonight's live session, but also you will get a link after the live session once the content is ready to do. And I usually will share also my entire slide deck for viewing as well, in addition to video and podcast. So today's topic is going to be revolving around this particular question. How can you consistently turn ideas into valuable products? And we're going to be discussing current situation. We're also going to be discussing 9 steps to create valuable products, going from idea to valuable products consistently, and also discuss pitfalls to avoid. And as we do that, I'm going to be highlighting a few things, and be sure to type in any questions if you're confused or want me to elaborate more on some of this material, because I am going to go over material quite fast, just to make sure that at least we have enough time for Q&A at the end. And of course, we'll have the moderated Q&A at the end. So current situation. And before I proceed any further, I want to ask those of you, and I'm actually going to pull this poll. And the question is, how have you been impacted by COVID-19 pandemic? So I will launch the poll right now, and there are 5 available answers. You're already today unemployed or underemployed because of COVID-19. B, you have no impact. 3, you're mostly teleworking. 4, you're unhappily employed. Sorry for you. And number 5, overwhelmed with work, that you've got so many requests, so many customers asking you for things that you're overwhelmed with work. And before I proceed any further and give you some time to answer these questions, I want to say that if you're on the on either end of this spectrum, right, unemployed, underemployed, not necessarily a good thing, but also overwhelmed with work is also not a good thing as well. And especially if you are a product manager and you tend to be overwhelmed with work, that's not necessarily a good situation when it comes to trying to figure out what are the right products to keep in market and what are the new products that you need to accelerate into market, because now it's an opportunity, and opportunities are only time-based, and what products you're going to just have to retire because it just doesn't make sense to continue. So I'm going to end the poll, and I'm going to display the results, share the results. So here's what comes out. The majority of you are teleworking now, 100%. That's good. And equally, no impact, where some of you are overwhelmed with work. So we're going to talk about specifically what happens when you're a product manager and you may have the entire product management team is overwhelmed with work, because that's also not necessarily a very good situation. So I'm going to stop sharing the results, and you should be seeing my screen now again. Let me know if you're stuck, because sometimes the polls tend to be stuck in there, and I want to make sure you're viewing my next screen. So a little bit of the current situation is, here's what's happening right now. COVID-19 has meant that most of us have been utilizing our mobile devices and are now downloading more mobile apps than ever before. 52% rise in downloads of mobile applications. So if you're a digital product manager, is that good for you? That you're seeing, is this why you're seeing a lot of overwhelming demand or overwhelming work? We're going to talk about this, but 52% worldwide. This is not just a US statistic, this is a worldwide phenomena. And 52% rise, we're talking about a few hundred petabytes of information. And for you, those of you that are not scientific, a petabyte is 10 to the 15 bytes. So it's actually quite a bit of information. This is what's happening because of COVID-19. And here's some of the apps that are mostly been downloaded the most as of the end of March. Is this what you would expect to be in the top 10 around the world? TikTok, WhatsApp, Zoom, Facebook, Messenger, Instagram, Netflix, Share It, and Snapchat, and then Google Classroom. We're going to talk about specifically what exactly are these apps, because for the most part you would say, okay, I'm seeing some of the same old social media applications, but you see Zoom at number 3. And Zoom, we're going to talk about what's happening to their valuation right now. They are skyrocketing since COVID-19. And before we continue, I want to do a second poll, and I want to ask you, as a product manager, what's happening to the demand for your product? Whether or not your product is digital or not, what's happening? And I'm actually going to push out this poll. I'm going to launch it. So the question is, how has demand for your product been impacted? Is it significant drop in demand? Is it reduced demand? Is it same demand as before? Is it more demand? Or is it overwhelming demand where you're now back order on everything? And depending on things, you may be, depending on, it's not necessarily which industry you're in, because if you are in a technology company or you are a software company, that's just the industry you're in. But it really depends on what industries or what segments you're selling into. And this is something you don't control, right? You don't control buyer behavior as a product manager. No one does. No one in your building does. And usually this is where the risk comes in, the business risk comes in. And whether or not your product has enough to actually persevere through the downturn, if you are experiencing a downturn, meaning significant drop in demand or some drop in demand compared to before, what is it you're going to do to actually persevere and then accelerate once recovery begins? So we'll talk about that, and then I'm actually going to stop the poll and now share the results. And here's the results. About it's an equal tie, but for the most part, you have more demand. Some of you are seeing more demand for your product. Some of you are seeing reduced demand, and another portion of you are seeing significant drop in demand. So all in all, if you look at the sort of like, who's been impacted, where you're seeing some loss in demand or significant drop, that's the majority of you in this. And we'll talk about specifically what can you do to actually ensure that your product perseveres, and then you can accelerate towards recovery once recovery starts seeing. So I'm going to start sharing, and you should be seeing my screen again. And here's a McKinsey report that was just published as of the end of March. This is just the loss in real gross domestic product for U.S. industries. And this report was published and made public by McKinsey at the end of March. And it shows the impact in real GDP drop industry by industry. And you can see on the left-hand side, the industries that have been the most impacted are the obvious ones: airlines, commercial, air travel, oil and gas, insurance, banks. So that's insurance and banks, financial services. So if you're a fintech company, not necessarily a good thing. There may be some niches that are growing, but for the most part, there's a broad segments that are being impacted. And by the way, everything on the left-hand side of this, they're being impacted at depression level, not recession, depression, as in Great Depression of the 1930s. So we haven't seen this drop in demand ever since the Great Depression in US for these industries. Then on the right-hand side are the industries that tend to be less impacted. And what you see here on the right-hand side, going from left to right, is high-tech, logistics, retail, and consumer services. And for some of you who have been tracking retail, you're saying retail is not as much impacted. Well, then I would say there's niches that are in growth, and then niches that are doing really bad. And we'll talk about that as well, because just because you're in an industry that has had very little impact compared to the ones that are on the right-hand side of this diagram is not necessarily a good thing if you are in the wrong niche. So let me move on to the next thing. And that is that achieving before even COVID-19, if you look at report after report after report from experts and what they're saying about products that are going out there, more and more product, the kind of like the fallacy of being agile is that you're putting more and more of the wrong product into the market, or even worse, the wrong product in the wrong market, and you're doing more of the same, right? So more product is not necessarily going to equate to more revenue, more profit, more growth for your company. This is what experts are saying. And most vendors, this is as of a report that was actually published in March of 2016 by MIT Sloan Review, a report that looked across industries, and they're saying the failure rate is due because most vendors struggle to really understand how buyer behavior changes. And if there's anything that changes outside of your control, it's not the product, it's what people buy and how they buy and when they buy and how much they buy. And those are things you don't control. As a product manager, you need to be really good at understanding buyer behavior. And that's not something that comes from either your executives or your developers or your sales team or your or any of your managers that you're working with, right? So this is why you need to start doing some additional research. So here's the outcome. Most organizations today have deficiencies on how they allocate people, processes, and products. And all of these three things, failure in how you allocate people, to functions, tools, and systems, to the way you manage your entire product portfolio, leads to less profitability over time. And usually in retail, it's mostly losses, and they depend on one season or a few weeks in the year to get back into the black. That's retail, and that's what has been happening to retail for the last 10 years since Amazon.com started rising. So less profitability for retailers all the way across, especially those that have been laggards, and we'll talk about what that means. But what is a valuable product? Well, a valuable product is what I would call has three characteristics. It's got to be desirable by some segments that are your target customers. It's got to be feasible, meaning you're able to execute on the plan as to how you build it, how you launch it, how you support it once it is in market. And viable. And viability means that number one thing that you need to do is make sure that you have positive cash flow and drive that into growth of revenue. But at some point, the next thing is profit. And profit is how you actually can accelerate the growth of your product. So a valuable product has all three of these things, not just one or two, all three, in order for the product to have a high product to market fit. So an MVP, in order for that MVP to not just be viable, but be valuable, has to be desirable, feasible, and viable, meaning profitable, not just grow your revenue, but actually have profit. So let's now talk about 9 steps as to how you would create products that have all three of these characteristics, right? Here's the snapshot, and we're going to talk into more detail about each one of these. I'm going to give examples of some of these companies that today are digital products, and some of them are winning and some of them are losing, mostly because they never really foresaw COVID-19 happening, right? So number 1, cultivate a growth mindset culture within your company. Number 2, shape a bold growth strategy. Number 3, understand your current situation. 4, adopt a playbook. 5, boost customer value. 6, benchmark your competitors. 7, leverage collaborators. 8, grow recurring revenue streams. 9, know when to adapt and accelerate when needed. So let's talk about each one of these in more detail. So first of all, the path to valuable products requires a growth culture. And what I mean by that is a growth mindset culture. Those of you that don't understand what a growth mindset is, here's the difference. Growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And what I find in most organizations, even when they talk like they're actually want to be like Apple, guess what? They're fixed mindset organizations. And it doesn't take a lot of digging around. When you do an assessment of the organization, you find that people don't reward failure. People don't reward learning from lessons that you from failure. And those are mostly fixed mindset. Growth mindset means that you're looking for opportunities to learn, and the best opportunities to learn more are when you fail, and fail fast, fail forward. And those are the kinds of organizations that can actually produce lots of valuable products, not just one, but a whole stream of valuable products. These are companies like Apple, for example. And by starting with cultivating a growth mindset, you're at all your people, it means that, especially when these are customer-facing people, and customer-facing may be not just be marketing and sales, because they may be your installers, there may be the people that are actually providing customer support over the phone, or the chat now capability on your website. The more that you inspire customer-facing employees, they will drive your product not just into more growth, more revenue, it'll also drive more profitability. Because what they will do is they will actually inspire lots of customers to not only continue to buy more often, but also tell great things to their friends and family about your product, and now they become your referrals. And that's what you want to be able to do. So here's an example. I talked about that number 3, one of the most downloaded applications, Zoom. Have you looked at the valuation for Zoom? They actually have gone over 35% in share prices. It is a public company. And if you look, single founder who used to work at WebEx got funded from Sequoia and a few other VCs from Silicon Valley where they're located. And they have skyrocketed since the beginning of this year. And GoToWebinar, for the most part, has maintained, because they've been around the longest. But most people, the new people, have actually adopted a video conference application for business for the first time, has gone to Zoom rather than legacy systems like GoToWebinar. The path to valuable products requires a bold strategy. And a bold strategy is really what you as a product manager need to be driving towards. Understand what does it mean to have a growth strategy and not just any strategy. A bold growth strategy means that you need to figure out what is your growth engine within your organization and what are those functions that are critical that will maintain your products growing today, but also new products that are not yet in market, and be able to pick the right ones to build and then launch at the right time. And all of these are things that you want to be able to line up over time. And your growth engine is what you will start doing with your people, your processes, and current products, and then new products that are now going to be launched in the near future. And most organizations that have a growth engine make the mistake that all they do is work on Horizon 1 products, which means they're mostly optimizing. They're spending the majority of the time on the right hand. Exploitation or optimization is what we're talking about on the right hand side. Experts are saying that your growth engine is not just about optimization or exploration. You have to do optimization and exploration at the same time. And the same growth engine has to be able to do both at the same time, not one or the other, but both. And what I find is that when you are a very tactical product management team, when the entire organization is way too tactical, you're mostly doing just optimization and that's it. And yes, you're working on new things, but it's about just mostly retention of current customers. It's not about acquiring new customers necessarily, because many of those require exploration. So if you line this up, your growth engine has to have a component that is Horizon 1, Horizon 2, Horizon 3 products, where Horizon 1 is purely today's revenue streams. Growth in Horizons 2 and 3 are future revenue streams. And you need to have a good mixture across all three horizons, not just Horizon 1. Most companies that today are failing is because they never thought about that they needed to come in with new products so quickly. They never foresaw a change in the next normal. And you can actually create your growth engine in a way that you can integrate all three horizons with the same teams that you have. You just have to plan out your growth strategy accordingly. Lyft and Uber. Has anybody been doing any ride sharing lately? Right? These are both leaders. And what's happening to both of them? They're experiencing this significant drop in demand. Not because people don't like Uber or Lyft. You know, if you're an Uber user or a Lyft user, you probably like one or the other, or maybe both. Today, before COVID-19, Lyft was actually growing faster than Uber in US. And Uber now has dropped, and actually their global competitive landscape has been changing, and they're pounded in every region by different players. Lyft is one of them that has been growing faster here in the US, already has plans to expand to the rest of North America, and they've already started this year. The path to valuable products requires a holistic perspective. You cannot have a meaningful, bold growth strategy unless you understand your current situation. And current situation is not just about your competitors, your company, your customers. It's also about understanding collaborators, both on the supply side and the demand side, both, and understanding not just the macro level, but also the micro level that pertains to your industry and the industrial niches that you're selling into. That is understanding not just the climate, but it's also about understanding the weather and how it impacts demand to the niches that you're selling into, and be able to estimate and forecast revenue and be able to predict what's happening so that you can then adjust your entire business the right way, proactively. And being able to translate your strategy into action means that you now have to come up with all the right KPIs across all of these things that are part of climate, competitors, customers, collaborators, and company. And the more complexity, the more KPIs you have to add. What I find most often is that most people may have a great strategy, but not any way to measure execution. Or people who can execute brilliantly, but then they don't have such a great strategy. And very few companies that actually excel at both strategy and its execution and have the right metrics in place to be able to ensure that they have lots of ways that they can pivot when they need to. And that is what makes an adaptable organization. Here are the top shopping apps. Those of you who have been now in lockdown, have you been downloading or ordering more from Amazon and all of these shopping applications? These are the ones that have been downloaded the most since January of 2020. And this is US market, by the way. Actually, it's worldwide, but there's US market as well. And it's amazing because you can see that Wish and Amazon are actually both in US. And Amazon is a global product. Wish is a newer app. It's in US right now, looking to expand to North America and other regions. Number 4, adopt a playbook. Adopting a playbook is about process. So we started talking with people. That's our culture. People. This is about playbook. It's about understanding what is the game plan that you're going to use to actually win in the marketplace. And winning is not just about necessarily driving your competitors out of business. A bold growth strategy ensures that whatever you do, your product, you're measuring product performance, and that you have the processes so you have consistency in the way you're managing all of your products across your entire portfolio, and you're measuring the same each and every product, and there are no pet products. For those of you who have been stuck managing pet products, you know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, type in a question, we'll talk about that at Q&A. But once you have a process, now you have deliverables that are clear, documents that know exactly what should be the content, and the purpose as to why you need to have those documents at different times, different phases of the product lifecycle. And it's clear that you need to do this for every single product in your product portfolio. Do not skip any of this because that's when things start breaking down. Here's even more. We talked about Amazon.com. Here's the biggest challenger today, Walmart.com. Walmart being the biggest brick and mortar retail today in North America. And AWS powering Amazon.com. And Amazon.com has become the largest online retailer and is today the biggest online retailer. But if you look revenue by revenue, Walmart is still outselling Amazon.com by at least 90% more total revenue, gross revenue of everything sold in Walmart stores. Walmart.com, which is now Walmart's version of Amazon.com, has been growing faster than Amazon.com in US. And today, I would venture to say that if you are shopping, you're maybe shopping across mobile apps. I would say probably a handful of mobile apps if you're like me, not just Amazon.com, Walmart.com, and a few others. And right now, Walmart.com has a very unique value proposition that Amazon.com cannot match. And that is you order on the app or online, and then you can pick up at the nearest store, and you're getting status on your mobile app as to your appointment when you're supposed to just drive through. Somebody will give you your bag with everything that you already purchased, and all you'd have to do is just drive home with it. So you don't even have to stop by the store. You just buy it and drive through your nearest Walmart location to pick up whatever it is that you bought online. Amazon.com will have a hard time unless you're ordering food, which they have Whole Foods now, but they're still not caught up with all the items that Walmart.com offers, because pretty much you can go to any size Walmart and drive through now. The path to valuable products also requires customer focus. And customer focus means that you need to understand buyer behavior in order to boost customer value, the right value proposition to the right customer segments. And segment by segment, your value proposition changes even if you're selling the same product across all segments. This is where you start really looking at is your current business model upside down? Meaning your cost of capturing new customers is higher than the cost that you can achieve over a period of a year or 2 years or 3 years from whatever they're going to buy from you over the lifetime of that same time period. And often you need to make sure that your business model for your product against each segment becomes well balanced, meaning they're going to buy more from you than it takes for you to capture new segments. And the only way you're going to do that is not through product, is by using the other elements of the marketing mix. Not just product. This is about using your entire marketing mix to actually ensure that you have a well-balanced business model for your product, segment by segment. Chick-fil-A and McDonald's, Dunkin' and Starbucks. These are the competitors. And today, when McDonald's is a global brand and Chick-fil-A is mostly a regional brand because they're in US today and they're starting to expand to the rest of North America, which one is more profitable location by location? Is it the 24/7 McDonald's or is it Chick-fil-A? You'll be surprised to know that location by location, Chick-fil-A is more profitable than any McDonald's in North America today. And yes, revenue-wise, McDonald's makes a lot of revenue because they're a global company, but location by location, Chick-fil-A is killing it with their chicken sandwich. And they made chicken sandwich the best-selling item in US in the last 5 years, where now they're driving more competitors like Popeyes who want to be like Chick-fil-A, being known for their chicken sandwich, not the burgers like McDonald's and the rest of their competition. Still quick convenience. Same thing with Dunkin'. They dropped the donuts from their brand recently, and they now have they have the same coffee, same quality coffee as Starbucks, not as expensive, however, but they're offering more add-ons, more assortment in the add-ons, not just pastries like Starbucks. And Dunkin' has been growing faster than Starbucks in the last 3 years in US. The path to valuable products requires knowing your competition. I mentioned that it's not only about knowing your competitive landscape, it's also about benchmarking your competition, meaning measuring not just pound for pound, location by location, employee by employee, their revenue compared to your revenue, or the revenue for the direct competing product against the product you own, but also measuring the profitability of your product compared to theirs. Product management means that you don't just focus on revenue alone. Managing product performance means your number one metric is how much more profitable your product is compared to direct competing products in the same market. And there's a lot of benchmarking involved. This is not the kind of stuff that you're going to be able to just grab from any market report. There's a lot of homework to be done in knowing how to benchmark your competition the right way. And here's some examples of additional food applications. I mentioned Uber, and Uber is Horizon, right? The ride-sharing app for Uber is Horizon 1. Uber Eats was launched more recently, I want to say maybe about three years ago. And Uber Eats is a Horizon 2 type of product for Uber, and it's just a food ordering application. And today, they're in the top 4 in US. And they've been now launching globally, but in US, these are the top 4 competitors. And yes, Domino's is there because this is as of March of 2020. Domino's was number 4, and everybody else here was in the top 5 for US food applications. Now, Domino's is just for Domino's, right? Very different than Grubhub, DoorDash, or Postmates, or Uber Eats, because these are just basically food ordering, and you can basically say, are you going to carry out, or you want delivery? And you can have multiple brands across those 4. Domino's has been rising because they were early adopters in actually digitizing revenue streams as to how they sell pizza, not just in the US, but across all of their markets. This is the reason why Domino's by itself is number 4 in just pizza and whatever add-ons you buy with pizza. The path to valuable products requires collaboration, and collaborators can be on the front stage as well on the backstage side. Backstage is behind the scenes from your customers, including your suppliers, all your entire supply chain, things that your customers don't see. Front stage includes not just your customers, but often you have intermediaries, and those are channels, part of place, and often you want to make sure that you have the right collaborators on both the supply side and on the demand side in order for you to leapfrog your competition. And this has nothing to do with product. It has to do with other elements of the mix, place and promotion and other things that you want to make sure that you are leapfrogging your competition and remain more profitable than your competitors. And here's an example of the different type of collaborators. Not necessarily going to get into a lot of detail, but just FYI. Let's talk about 2 different applications. Airbnb. How many of you are Airbnb users? And how many of you are Marriott users? And which one is rising faster today? Because today, what's happening to Airbnb? Airbnb is imploding because most of us canceled trips that we had, whether it was a wedding or graduation or a conference, all those things. And this is happening globally, right? Airbnb, their demand has significantly dropped, and they're in the hospitality side. So that's on the left-hand side of the McKinsey graph that I showed. That's impacted today globally at depression level. So just recently, Airbnb announced 25% reduction in workforce across the world, and they secured cash to keep them operating for the next 5-7 years, because that's how long it's going to take them to recover, right? Marriott, on the other hand, this is a brand new program they just launched last year. And they did so because they acquired Starwood. And when Airbnb had more properties before this acquisition, Marriott, with this new acquisition of 2 global brands now being integrated, Marriott is now the largest hotel chain, global hotel chain again. And they introduced this rewards and loyalty program and an app where you can book, just like you can book at any hotels.com, any Marriott, any brand that Marriott owns. And they own lots of different hotel brands, from Courtyard to the Ritz-Carlton to ... That's Marriott, right? And those are global hotel chains, all integrated onto one app that allows you to book anywhere you want to travel in the world. And I would say that right now, Marriott Bonvoy is rising faster than Airbnb, and Airbnb is trying to recover. And I sort of predict that I think the next play for Marriott is to try to buy Airbnb, because right now their valuation is low. They have tanked. The path to valuable products requires funding. And that means that having a single revenue stream is never enough for any product, especially when you're trying to drive your product into growth and then to become more profitable. The more revenue streams that you implement over time, and implementation of revenue streams doesn't happen by itself. And this is not somebody else's job. This is product management. This is the strategic side of product management, knowing the different types of revenue streams that you could have for the same product and how you would deploy them in the same market and how you would do it so you can turn that product and not just have 1, but maybe 3 to 5 revenue streams. And some of those examples of residual revenue streams are here. You know, anything that you buying today from AT&T, where you have the triple play, the quadruple play, you know, where it entails not just wireless services, but also other things that are under the same brand name. This is exactly what's happening with many of these companies. And examples of the different types of streams, this is price, not product. And the reason I'm talking about this is because in my world, when I look and assess the knowledge of product managers, I see that they have a gap in knowledge and to how you can do pricing. And studies have shown that even a small 1% increase in pricing may actually drive your profitability into double-digit profitability if you were able to figure out how to implement that 1% price adjustment. Food and beverage, if you follow what's happening right now to everything we're buying at the grocery store right now, that's pricing adjustment because of rising demand, lower supply. And as supply goes down and demand goes high, what happens to your price points? It's a seller's market, and we're the buyers. You got to make pricing adjustments because that's your opportunity to make your product more profitable temporarily. Here's examples of a rising sector that just happening because these are all N95 mask manufacturers in US. 3M is, of course, a global company, so they're selling these type of masks around the world, not just US. Kimberly-Clark, the same. Honeywell, however, is a mid-market company headquartered here in US and trying to ramp up production because right now, all of us are looking for all different shapes and sizes of N95 masks. And that's going to be the next normal for at least the next 18 months or so. Moldex, the same. So these are all the ones that are right now trying to figure out how to keep up with a rising demand of N95 masks that require ramping up manufacturing in US. The path to valuable products are also require your business model to be adaptable and be able to be agile and quick. Acceleration is what you need to do. Accelerate, decelerate, accelerate, decelerate as you start seeing these winds in the economy in the way people will be looking for your product. Hard to predict if you're not doing your homework ahead of time to try to predict what your demand is going to be looking like and how there may be seasonality to demand, and you need to ensure that you have enough to keep up with demand at the right times. So know when to adapt and accelerate is something that you need to do. And that means you have to measure, and figure out how to predict the future. Without measuring to not just the macro level, but the micro level, you won't be very good at predicting the future. As a matter of fact, you might as well just go with your gut feel. That's what most everybody does. And you know what happens when people go with their gut feel, right? If you want to be data-driven, you have to measure. And you have to come up with new KPIs every time there's new changes in the market. And you can expand your offering, and there are different ways that you can expand your offering, meaning you add to a product line or you create a line extension of a current product, or you can actually add on products, right? These are all things that allow you to start monetizing in different ways from the same core product. And figure out how to repurpose everything that you're doing because you're not necessarily going to make something new. You're just basically adding something that is incremental to you, to your operations in a way that you can actually monetize in different ways. And often what it means is that you have to also be prepared to accelerate certain activities where if you're in retail and you haven't been doing enough digitization of your business, guess what you need to do if you're going to persevere? You have to accelerate digitizing your entire business model. And this is not just on the customer side. We're talking about all three elements of being a valuable product, meaning the front stage has to be digitized, the back stage has to be digitized, and your profitability, the way you're measuring cost structure, cash flow, revenue streams, profit, has to be digitized as well. And that's the future. Here are companies that have been digitizing even as they have gone from winning against brick and mortar to now being just digital only, right? This is furniture as a service. Wayfair, purely digital. From the very beginning, no brick and mortar locations, a nice portal, a nice set of mobile applications, and you can order any kind of furniture for whether your home or office, and they're right now rising. They've been seeing a 34% increase in demand since COVID-19. IKEA, brick and mortar, announcing plans to expand and expanding not their locations alone, they're expanding their digital coverage across all three areas that are critical: the front stage, the backstage, and the way they're measuring revenue analytics. And that's both of them. And I predict that right now, IKEA got stuck in the middle of their implementation of their growth plan. Wayfair has been killing it because they started digital. They were digital first, and they're winning right now. So to summarize, here are the 9 steps to valuable products. We talked about cultivating a growth mindset. Why culture? You might have a great strategy, but guess what? Culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Without the right culture, you're not going to be able to either have the right strategy nor be able to execute that strategy. So that's the way you want to start with number 1. Ensure that you're cultivating a growth mindset culture within your company as a product manager. Shape a bold growth strategy. Understand what growth means. And growth is about measuring not just revenue, profit as well. Understand your current situation, not just your competitors and your company and the macro level. You have to start looking at all these different components that are part of the entire picture. Then adjust and make adjustments to the way you allocate your people, your teams, your processes. Boost customer value based on your understanding of buyer behavior and your ability to predict demand across segments. Benchmark your competition and figure out not just how are they doing by location as far as profit, but also profit. Leverage your collaborators both on the supply side and also on the distribution side. Figure out how to grow and implement new revenue streams. And recurring revenue streams can be completely digital, meaning a mobile app or a web portal with payment system, electronic payment systems, and know from there when to pivot your business model when you need to, so that you can adapt quicker than your competition, and then you can slow down and accelerate faster, quicker than your competition. That's what it's all about. Here are some of the pitfalls to avoid if you're a product manager, right? Ensuring that at least your strategy is executable, ensuring that understand how, what is the right culture to have, how to start nurturing the right culture within your organization. All these things are part of things that you want to start. For further reading, this is our hyperlinks that are going to be available on your on the slide decks that I'm going to be sharing with you. Here's some upcoming announcements. And for those, I don't know if we have questions, but basically we're going to get into Q&A. Here's some upcoming announcements. I'm doing actually a meetup, and we're talking about why COVID-19 has been the fastest accelerant of digitization across industrial sectors in US today, and that includes predictive analytics. We're going to talk about this on Thursday evening. It's going to be a virtual meetup. You can sign up. It's a meetup, so you can actually just click through the sign up button here and just attend if you're interested in hearing more of this discussion of how you digitize your business. Then also there's a webinar that's coming up on Tuesday of next week. It's free to attend, and you can just sign up and you can attend the live session for free. And I'll be talking about how you can transform, for those of you who are unemployed or underemployed or unhappily employed, those of you that are in that boat, you want to transform your career because now you're looking to land your next career move, and it may not be in the company where you're at today. And we're going to be focusing on how you actually start creating your own story in this discussion. And here's a workshop because I have teamed up with executive presence and image consulting coach. We're going to be talking about how to elevate your presence when you are in the Zoom world in business. So whether it's a stand-up or whether it's customer facing or managing your suppliers, whatever it is that you're doing as a product manager, this is how you would elevate your presence using any kind of video conference applications. Here's a course that I'm actually doing. It's a virtual course that starts later this month. You can click through to learn more to register if you're interested, but basically it's a 5-day training on product management, the entire thing. My talks are all available on this particular landing page, and my contact information is here. So feel free to either email me, connect with me on LinkedIn, or follow me on Twitter, and be more than glad to reach out if you have any questions. And I think, Lindsay, we're ready for any questions. I don't know if we have any questions. I think I saw something, but we can maybe just allow some time.
I have some questions if no
Perfect.
one else does. And to your point about like image on Zoom, which means probably finding a better backdrop for what I have going on today, and probably not a full t-shirt. Anyways, so I had a couple questions. Actually, I had posted something up into the chat while you were talking about the Airbnb stuff, because that's actually been that's been a topic of conversation at 3Pillar as well. And we were talking about how there's actually the concept of accelerating out of the turn, right? So we have people have pumped their brakes to kind of figure out what's going on. And some folks have hit the apex and are getting ready to accelerate out. And some folks are still trying to find their way. Airbnb is on like permutation number 4. And I think you could argue that there's actually an amazing opportunity in front of them. Because as people want to get into these more smaller controlled type stays and like not have big hotels full of people and restaurants and really just want a house, Airbnb has a huge opportunity there if they figure out a way to kind of lean into that and to start leveraging that. I mean, they did furlough a lot of folks in order to stay alive, but they did it so they could stay alive to get to the other side of this. So I think it's an interesting thought when you look at them against Marriott, who is in the midst of a huge merger with the Starwood properties and kind of stuck. Like they have all this money sunk in this merger and not a lot available to try to accelerate out of this curve. So Airbnb has an opportunity to overtake Marriott. Love to kind of see that. Maybe not overtake them, but you know.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting because I think right now, if you look at the news, and actually I looked up what they published, right? Airbnb CEO wrote a long letter, which is, you know, one of the great things about Airbnb. I think it's a great company. Number one is they have a growth mindset culture, definitely, right? And this is where, you know, it starts. I mean, there was a long landing page that you can actually find if you look up, you know, Airbnb news. And the CEO, you know, wrote a long letter saying, we're laying off 25% of our workers and they're going to be around the world. And this is why, right? And they explained as to, you know, yeah, hospitality and everything in hospitality has tanked, not just in US, but across the different regions. And they're part of hospitality, and hospitality has been hit hard, right? There's no one traveling right now in the near future to any conferences. There's no one traveling to meet with customers anymore. You know, no one traveling. You know, what happened to me personally, my training usually involves international traveling. So that's what I've been doing for the last 5 years. This year, I was on track. I had 100 training days total planned that require international travel. All of them went away overnight, right? So now I had to reinvent my business model. And yes, I can do the same delivery online. But what I'm finding out in the minds of the customers, and I basically I'm training executives and senior managers of companies that have lots of product managers and product marketing managers or brand managers, right? That's the kind of people that I train. The kind of training I do is you know, companies, and their mindset is sort of like old school because they think, well, the best way for me to really get something, you know, is to have the person, you know, that person in front of me so I can get the most and learn, right? They haven't really tried the interactiveness of some of the more modern video conferencing tools. And I think that's the experience that Zoom delivers is the reason why Zoom grew. Because if you've been a WebEx user or a GoToWebinar user, these are the legacy systems that have been around for a long time, right? And if you use them, Zoom is completely different, right? And it's because it has the option that it kept all the value that the legacy systems had. And actually the founder of Zoom came from WebEx. He used to be at WebEx. He left WebEx, then founded Zoom and got and started on a new more modern code base of building this platform, and very quickly, created a very an incredible user experience. And I think right now the momentum has been shifting, where people that don't enjoy those legacy systems that have been around for a long time have migrated to Zoom, right? And even though these legacy tools have been around for years, and what that's causing also is many of the legacy users, once their plans expire, they migrate to Zoom, right? This is exactly what's happening. I think Zoom is going to continue growing for the next 12 to 18 months for that reason alone. Airbnb, I think, in that case, if you look at who can actually do that, you're looking at now, there are niches, because I know there's a Airbnb for recreational vehicles. So you can actually find recreational vehicles that are available for you to rent near you. And there's an app for that is not Airbnb, right? Oh. There's an app, and these are global apps, by the way, also. There's another app where you can actually find the Airbnb for yachts. Yep. So these are all things that Airbnb didn't get to implement, and now their choice is to persevere and then buy out these other players, because those are niches that are going to be remaining, even though people will still be renting properties. There's a different niche that will rent yachts or something else as opposed to taking a cruise nowadays, right? Because I would say cruise lines are going to take longer to recover than somebody just saying, let's get a big group together and rent a yacht and just go around, a certain area, right, of the world. Yep. And these are all things that Airbnb didn't get to implement. And right now they only have the play that is on properties, and maybe they can go into niches of residencies that they have, but they're going to have to create new experiences that they haven't introduced yet in market. Yep. And they're going to have to figure out what is the demand for those different things, and where are they going to be coming from? What is the average order size, and how many other, and what seasonality there is to those buy decisions.
Yeah, I definitely think they have reinvented themselves at least twice in the last two downturns. So I'm excited to kind of see what they do, because they have the growth mindset. They do stay nimble, and they have kind of positioned themselves. So we'll see and how that goes. Another question, and then I think Swati had one too. So do you think that some of the recent successes that you've talked about, and like you had a bunch of different examples of companies that are excelling and companies that are not doing so well, do you think those are smart uses of a crisis to accelerate themselves, or were they already ahead and the crisis just kind of revealed that they were that much better?
So let me, I did some research on these N95 mask manufacturers. And what I find out is that Honeywell, did you know that Honeywell made N95 masks? I didn't know that. Because I know Honeywell for other products, but Honeywell, actually what they did is in the last pandemic, which was a SARS pandemic, right? Mm-hmm. Wasn't a big thing in US, but it was a big thing in other parts of the world. Mm-hmm. It was Honeywell that after that pandemic, they actually acquired this subsidiary that is now Honeywell, the manufacturer of N95 masks. Mm-hmm. So Honeywell did this knowing that there was probably going to be a likelihood that within a few years, it's going to be another pandemic. Right. Maybe not the same as SARS, but maybe worse than SARS. And, they speculated, and that paid off now. Right.
That was a crazy risk, though, man. That's a Horizon 3.
So it goes back to making sure that you have a clear picture of what is Horizon 1, what is Horizon 2, and what is Horizon 3, and that you deploy your strategy across all three, not just Horizon 1. Yeah. Right. Horizon 2 and Horizon 3 is about your ability to speculate and then figure out how to move them from 3 to 2 to 1 when the market is ready. Not when you're ready, but when the market is ready. And most product managers, it's, they're stuck sometimes, because if you're in the wrong culture, you're being told, yeah, just launch. Even though as a product manager, that it's the wrong time, right? or that you have too many unknowns, and you're not necessarily going to see that the right traction that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
All these things are the things that companies like Apple, companies, that actually do this, they actually have a growth engine that focuses across all three horizons at the same time.
Yeah.
And their entire team, not just one person, but teams of product managers and marketing managers discussing why is this horizon 1 for the next year or 2?
Mm-hmm.
Why are these things still horizon 2? And why are these things still horizon 3? And how much investment do we do across all three,
Mm-hmm.
when the majority of your investment is going to be horizon 1, but then you have to have a good balance across 2 and 3 as well.
Yeah. And this may be a question that will take you forever to get through, because I think it's probably loaded, but like us poor little plebes that don't have these teams, that don't have all this power behind helping figure out what is 1, 2, and 3. And how often do you revisit 1, 2, and 3? Like, I mean, obviously, if I had sat down November of last year and looked at my horizons, and what I had planned there is certainly not what's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you think about going around that?
So I think it just depends on how quickly your market is changing in demand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for most companies, it's at least once a year. But sometimes these changes are happening quicker. It's more than that in a year, right? And the issue is that most companies don't have that discipline, right? Because they're missing, the knowledge and their skills of the people, or even their executives even knowing, because this is not something that executives are going to just tell you, oh yeah, go ahead and start, doing some planning, right? Mm-hmm. This is product portfolio analysis and management. And this is a function of product management. The function is not a one-person job. It never is, right? Because you got to look at your entire portfolio and then look at, which components of your portfolio are horizon 1, which components of your portfolio are horizon 2 and 3, and make sure that the entire team of product management agrees on that. Mm-hmm. And it's hard when you have a small team, but this is where you can actually start bringing in consultants to help you do the planning at the right time. Because without this, guaranteed, if you don't have the right information and you're missing things when you're doing your situational analysis, these are going to be errors and omissions in either how you design your strategy, or how you measure things, or how you implement your strategy. And all those things will lead to product failure, right? Failure meaning that you launch and that product never reaches profitability, period. You might get some revenue, but it never reaches profitability. And when you look at all the cost structure of ideating the product, designing it, prototyping it, testing it, launching it, supporting it, cost, and over time, zero chance of ever recovering all that entire sunk cost of everything you've done to actually have a product in market.
Right. Interesting. All right. So last question. I will pull Swati's from the comments. How do companies that rely on China, for example, for supply chain, manage the impacts of COVID?
So you're not the only one, because what this COVID-19 has shown is that everybody was depending on China. And yes, it's a large country with more than 1 billion people, but this has shown that you have to diversify your supply chains across regions, and everybody got caught on that. You're not the only one, because even companies like Apple, few people know that no matter what laptop you have in front of you, or what mobile device you have in front of you, what brand, they're all manufactured in one region, which is 50 miles east of Hong Kong, in China, no matter what brand, right? And that's what happens. You run out of inventory because they shut down, and they're not producing. Whatever they're producing today is not for today's market. It's for market 6-9 months from now, right? So if something happens and now demand rises and you stop production, you won't see that effect until like a few months later, especially if there's a surge in demand. This has happened to things like nobody thought about, like toilet paper, right? Because toilet paper is exactly the same. You don't, whatever brand you're buying, it's coming out of China, right? Or the raw material goes from one place to China and then into North America. And that's what majority of people have been doing for the last 15, 20 years. So what this has shown us is that, number one, we can't depend on one country, no matter how large and how, appealing it is to, because of the low labor rate. You now have to rethink how you are managing supply chains in the future if you want to persevere.
And it's so complex. Like, I don't think many people realize how complex the supply chain was until this happened. I know my husband even said something to me. He was starting to panic about certain things. I'm like, guys, you're fine. We're going to have truck drivers and stuff. He's like, no, it goes back further than that. So the components, we just don't even have the capacity to manufacture some of these things here. Or the raw materials don't exist here.
Yes.
It's easy to forget. It's easy to not see how incredibly complex it is.
Yes.
So, okay. Well, I could ask you questions all night, but we are towards the end. So, I will leave them from some meetup whenever we can sit down with coffee, or pizza.
Sounds great.
But thank you so much for your time, Hector, and walking us through all of these things. I actually do have one thing that maybe you can think about and get back to us. If you had to force rank the 9 that you've got there in terms of what do you think are the top 3? If you can't do them all, if you can't address them all at once, because I'm all about doing this to people, which one would you do first, second, and third, or
Sounds
focus on?
All right.
Okay.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, guys. And I guess we'll get the meetup updated later with the recording.
Thank you, Hector.
Thank you so much. And have a great rest of your month. Be safe.
All right. Bye, guys.